This last week, I celebrated a 5-year anniversary of my very first trade. Honestly, it snuck up on me. 5 years goes by extremely quickly and also extremely slowly. I decided that I was going to do a little bit of diving into my last 5 years to kind of review what I've been through in order to be a trader. So here's the craziest part. I am not a profitable trader yet, but the cool thing is I've actually managed to stay in the game regardless. To be completely honest, this little voice in my head made me think that maybe I'd be a little upset by the results. So here are some of my stats. I had 33 red months. I had 16 green months. I spent nearly $7,000 on trades, real money. I spent about $1,000 on Timothy Sykes' chat room and access to his content. And I spent about $4,000 on Ross Cameron's course. During that time, I probably also spent money on books and fees like bank transfer fees. And I'm not 100% sure of the exact number. I'm sitting somewhere around $12,000 to $13,000 invested in my education. Another interesting stat is that I've blown up my account about 3.5 times. All but the first one have been under $2,000. I made my first paper trade on August 24th, 2017. I only made one trade that day, and it actually happened to be green. I only started trading following many months of research and study. Initially, I really didn't know if I wanted to become a stock trader, not to mention the obstacle of time. As a mom of 4 and a person who was trying to establish a new life after a divorce, this was a moment in time that was heavy and scary, and at the same time, I saw it as a do-over, basically. I had to get my kids to school every morning. I actually have to drive them in. That is right in the middle of trading time. So it made it a little bit scary to try to take that on. Thankfully, my husband has been backing me up here. He takes the ones that need to go earlier so that I can pay attention to my trading for at least an hour. At first, it didn't feel like I could make trading a priority. My life just didn't seem like the type that could absorb that kind of a career path. I ended up really working hard to figure out how to make it a priority. I handed over a lot more of the responsibility to them, and it made life better as a whole. I really questioned if I was the type of person that could actually make this work. I don't have an eidetic memory. Math is not my strong suit. I struggle immensely with technology and programs. I tend to always have problems with them. I also struggle to have a clear head when there's so much bustle happening around me, and with 4 kids and my husband getting ready for work and school in the morning and all the animals wanting my attention and wanting to be fed, I worried that all of that commotion would detract from my ability to do this. And I made a lot of boundaries with my kids and my husband. I made a routine for myself that made it possible for me to show up to the market each day and put in my screen time. I began to believe in myself like I never had before. Additionally, it felt kind of weird to talk about stock trading as my career path to anyone. And in fact, most people really didn't even know what I was talking about. They were just kind of like, okay, sure. My uncle told me about my aunt and how she had lost money and she stopped trading because it was so much money, though $5,000 was really not that much in the grand scheme of things. It almost seemed like everyone was trying to scare me out because it didn't seem like a real job. I recently learned the term internalized limitations, and it turns out that I had a lot of them. I kind of was aware of them in the back of my mind, all those little voices telling me the things that I could and could not do based on my experience. We collect reasons not to throughout our entire lives. We mostly focus on the negative. All these things kind of culminated and caused me to stop reaching further and higher than just the comfort zone I was in. I knew that I had it in me at a deep, deep, deep down level that I could do more than what I was doing, but I was just afraid to try. The comfortable spot that I was sitting in could be excruciating. The problem was I was familiar with it. And when you're familiar with a certain kind of pain, you're okay with staying there because it feels scarier to try to move outside of that and find a different comfort zone. So in July of 2017, I was married to my boyfriend who had introduced me to trading. And in the midst of creating a life together, dealing with our emotional baggage from our past relationships that had gone extremely badly, we were trying to learn how to trade. All of this emotional culmination of crazy because trading is 90% emotion and the mastery of it. And so doing that in conjunction with creating a brand new life in my 30s was a pretty intense time. We both worked extremely hard, and between September and November of 2018, we clocked in 3 solid winning months in our paper trading accounts, and that was extremely exciting. After those 3 months, we thought we were perfectly ready to go live. We got CMEG accounts, and I put in about, I think it was $5,326 after fees. I started trading, he started trading. We were hitting it just as hard as we were when we were paper trading. We did this because we wanted to trade just like Ross Cameron. He went into a small account challenge and he managed to increase his account by tenfold by like the first couple weeks. November 14th, I had a nearly $600 loss. This was intense, but I managed to keep pushing through that devastation. I was still emotionally distraught, so I kept losing, but I was losing smaller. Unfortunately, we kept losing smaller, and my husband, he lost too. So all that money was just kind of going up in smoke. We were thinking to ourselves, like, what happened between October and November? We were using the same kind of position size, these same plans and plays. We were just doing the exact same thing we had done before, but somehow we were losing. It meant that we blew up our accounts. It didn't make sense. Why couldn't we keep this going when we went live? We started to spiral, and from November to February, I lost about $3,400. March, unfortunately, was just as bad, and I added another $1,600 to that loss and essentially blew up my account. I took the rest of the money out, and I took 2 months off. When I returned in June of 2019, a pretty decent recovery emotionally, it only took me about 2 months to blow up my smaller account. I came back though, and then September 18th of 2020, I had about a $340 loss, and I decided that I needed to be done with CMEG. The commissions and the fees literally ate up all of the money that I had left over, and it made it impossible to get green trades when the commissions and the fees ate up everything that I won. At this point, I decided that I needed to go to a Thinkorswim cash account. This didn't have any fees except for a loading fee at the beginning, and it was super simple to stay within a certain share size that would allow me to maintain this account for a longer period of time. I could see for sure if I was losing or winning by trading the way I was. At this point, I also took some time to crunch the data from all of my trading in the past and see if I could find an edge. What I found was that after years of data, I had no edge, and that was pretty disappointing. My problem was that I was trading everything I saw. I wasn't focused on any particular thing. Of course, the data is going to show that I'm not going to be very good at any one particular thing if I'm going from one to another to another to another, and I'm just throwing money at literally everything. I needed to focus on my rules so that I could better master trading. Honestly, I was taking less than A quality setups because it wasn't even related to risk to reward. It wasn't even related to levels that made the most sense on the daily. I wasn't watching support and resistance correctly. I was looking at it in a much smaller time frame. When I recognized these errors in my thinking, I was able to correct them, and that actually has only been in the last 2 years. So here I had to get really good good at making rules for myself and sticking to them. I know that there are certain kinds of rules that I break nearly all the time, and there are certain habits that make it so that I break them less. I have never been perfect, and I don't know that I ever will be. But close enough most of the time is an edge, and it's as good as I can ask for. And thankfully, that's where I'm at. It took me about 10 months of trading one share to get the confidence that I needed to size up just a little bit. Another aspect of my trading that I needed to work on was the ability to scale out my profits. In the middle of all this, I was still extremely busy with regular life. In 2020, I decided that I was going to pull my kids from school and have them at home full time so that we could figure out what was happening in the world during the pandemic. I spent basically all day, every day, trying to motivate my children to do their work. During this time, it was intensely stressful for all of us. I was trying to do a lot, but somehow in that time is when I managed to recognize the most about my trading that has now helped me move substantially towards profitability. I was focusing smaller and finding ways to take the profit that was almost guaranteed and let some things run for bigger profits even during the market downturn. I've been steadily showing up consistently throughout that 5 years, and I am so glad that I have. Turns out that dedication was the biggest thing that I've achieved. I started out hoping that I would be profitable within a year to 2 years. Timelines just aren't reasonable to put on anything you haven't done before. I had so many days of frustration, and I actually call them fuck it days. I didn't care if I lost my whole account. I was angry at a stock. I was angry at the market. If I was being honest, I was angry only at myself. I hated that I didn't want to keep showing up year after year. I was so mad that I kept having the same stupid emotional human problems. Every time that I came around to a bad losing day, it was always the same reason. But the thing is, those moments when I gave into that pity party, when I allowed myself to just go fuck it and lose more money than was necessary, those were the moments that mattered the most. You can control the losses. You can tread water until you succeed. Those were the moments I could point at as the reason I wasn't profitable. Those moments undid months of progress. I think I'd rather dig myself out of a smaller hole, thank you very much. I've learned more hard lessons than I could count. I've lost way more money than I ever wanted to lose. I've been gutted, scared to death, sucker punched, and flipped on my head. But each time I tackled something hard and came out surviving, I felt the resolve settle in deeper that I would do this. I felt the gratitude that I was learning something important, even if it was the hard way. I blew up my first 2 accounts by simply going way too big. I followed Ross, who was my guru at the time. Of course I wanted to follow in his footsteps. Who wouldn't? No one really takes into consideration things like the fact that he was a master when he did this account challenge, and I was nowhere near a master. I just didn't focus my plan down enough. I didn't have a good one. I may have had some profitability in my paper trading account, but that didn't mean that I was actually a successful or knowledgeable trader. When I went to my Thinkorswim account and I managed to make that account last so long, I knew that there was some viability. It motivated me to keep trying. I refuse to lose another account. I will make back that nearly 12 grand. I don't feel bad that I invested all that time and money into this. So I went to college. My first 2 semesters, I spent 14 grand of my hard-earned money working at Denny's. I even had a $6,000 scholarship, and all of that was eaten up in 2 semesters. I went to college for about 4 years, and I managed to get an associate's degree in generals. That really doesn't give me any sort of skill beyond high school that is really worthwhile in the marketplace. I feel so much better about the skills I have gained in learning to trade than I did with that, and I've spent less money on it. So what was the hardest part? Well, I actually struggled with two things specifically. One was finding an easy way to establish and maintain risk to reward. And the second thing was focusing my plan down rather than playing everything that I saw. Risk to reward may seem like a simple concept, but because my mind is not very math oriented, it was difficult for me to wrap my head around it. I took about 4 years to fully understand what risk to reward really is. Also, in listening to my gurus, the concept of risk to reward was not very clear. In fact, it was surprisingly vague. They touched on it, they talked about it, but they didn't quite teach it. I needed to focus on proper sizing. I needed to take profits on the way up. I needed to take a larger size off at the first profit target so that I reduced my risk substantially and could create a much easier profitability. I know that if I had grasped the concept of risk to reward better at the beginning and how to achieve it, I would probably be a profitable trader at this point. The most important lesson that I've learned in trading is how to simplify. Simple means refined. It means trade less. It means focus in on a plan and a play that you do well, and we all need to learn how to take safe and reliable profit so that we aren't just holding out for those big, crazy runs and locking in something we can live on instead. It is so true what they say, a simple plan is the best plan. I started out paper trading everything that I saw, and over time I've dropped things that really haven't served me very well. This has really aided in focusing my mind on the very best plays and the very best levels. That has been crucial to my turning point. Again, it took me nearly 4 years to realize exactly what it was like to focus your mind down to the best possible plays, the A+ setups. They say A+ setup all the time, but you can't really understand what that is until you have a lot of experience. It seemed like I was never going to really understand my niche or find one. I'm so grateful that I finally mastered this concept enough. The bonus is that I spend less time documenting my trades because I take less trades. That is a huge time saver for me. I dreaded having to document my trades before because it just took so long. I'd have upwards of 20 trades to put into my Excel sheet, and now I have like 3 to maybe 6, and it is so much easier to get through my day and to have gains because it's just much more precise. Aside from those specific things, the hardest part was just showing up each and every day and getting to the point where that dedication was just what I did. I mean, years of losing real money. It made it difficult to show up, feeling the emotion of I'm never going to get this because I have 5 years of proof. That was hard to deal with. I treaded water through many varying kinds of markets, and I've seen a lot of shifts and momentum and dead days and dead weeks and dead months, and I've seen enough now that I think I understand market movement fairly well. That causes me to feel hope. I'm also not driven by the P&L anymore. I'm driven by being the best trader I can be. Through striving to do that, I have become more and more profitable. The easiest part, believe it or not, was the study. I studied for hours and hours. I took tons of notes. I watched tons of content. I read lots of things. I paid attention to chat rooms and the gurus and what they said and what other people were doing and how the market was moving. Ultimately, just because I studied well didn't mean that I was good at trading. I needed that screen time. What better way to do that than paper trading and having realistic expectations, trading properly. If you can't take that kind of size when you go live, don't trade it that way in the paper trading account. If you are doing that, you're going to set yourself up for complete disappointment or frustration or difficulty in executing in the same way when you go live. So what have I discovered about myself? Honestly, I am pretty impatient. I want to go places fast. I want to arrive. I want to meet my goals. I get frustrated in the process. I think it's pretty common for people to not want to put in the work during the grind. People get burned out a lot more than they admit. In spite of knowing all that about myself now, I also discovered I am really resilient. I am capable of doing extremely difficult things. This is literally the hardest thing I've ever done, and I've given birth 4 times, one without medication. So, with complete honesty, this was worth it, regardless of the pain and the difficulty and the emotional turmoil. I am a much better person now than I ever was before because of trading. And I didn't know that was going to be the case when I started out. I know I'm going to be a profitable trader. I have no doubt now.